Welcome back to the Wizard Weekly, where we talk about everything in gaming. The only thing higher than the Nintendo CEO's blood pressure after learning about the Switch 2 leaks days before it was officially revealed is the anticipation and expectation of players to know the price point of Nintendo's next handheld hardware that the design team collectively thought would be better on dark mode. And look, it's been like 4 days since the Switch 2 reveal, and given how saturated the internet is, there's nothing really new I can tell you about leaks and reveals and whatnot. I'm sure by now you coming into this video like Doctor Strange in that one Avengers scene, you've heard and seen every possible reality when it comes to Switch 2 by now. My favorite analyst, Matt Piscatella, gave some more exclusive knowledge to Gamers Radar on his hypothesis on what the Switch 2 is going to sell, and he claims that he doesn't think that the launch pricing will really matter since the early adopters of the Nintendo hardware aren't really price sensitive. I don't know if he knows the economy that we're in right now, but he ends it with saying that as long as it isn't egregious, it will still sell decently. Now, in my last video, I talked about Matt Piscatella in his other statement on Blue Sky, where he claimed that he doesn't think that the Switch 2 will sell anywhere near to what the original Nintendo Switch did, which recently passed a PlayStation 2 in overall lifetime units sold, which is an insane accomplishment. And of course, we could be wrong, he could be right. This is all just speculation, but Matt Piscatella, being more of a veteran in this whole analyst business, is why this holds weight. But I do think that there's a lot of factors that comes down to it when you're thinking about the Switch 2 and its day one pricing, because first of all, you got to take into account this is Nintendo. Like, this is the same company that is charging Mario Odyssey at $59.99 on their price tag, which is a 6-year-old, 5-year-old game by now. And even just fuck the games, talking about the consoles, the original Nintendo Switch is still retailing for $300 at most major retailers. Now, obviously, you can find it on sale every now and then for less than that. I've definitely bought mine way less than that. But the fact that we didn't get a baseline price cut for the original Nintendo Switch model even after the OLED came out, it shows the kind of business practice that Nintendo is going to be practicing, from this point forward, even though we already knew that. So yeah, speaking back on Switch 2 and the leaks, we know that the Joy-Cons are going to be, a real bulk of the price tag since they cram so much technology in those little freaking controllers that barely even the size of my palm. And not only are the new Joy-Cons magnetic, but we also have leaks that, there's going to be a Hall effect on them so that stick drift is just not going to be a thing. Like we saw in the trailer, Nintendo's teased them sliding on the ground, so there's probably going to be like a mouse feature, and that's on top of already the IR sensors and the motion controls that we already know the Switch 2 Joy-Cons are going to have, which retail for $79 for the original Switch model. So you can only imagine what these shits are going to retail for. And stating the obvious, bigger screen, a better processor, better graphics card, all that, I'm personally leaning towards $400. I guess I should say that's more what I'd like to pay, since we are living in a weird time. This is Nintendo. There's freaking scares of a price increase on all imports from other countries, so it might even get even crazier than that. But on the high end, and I really think that it'd be really pushing it, is if this retailed anywhere like in the $450, $499 range, because there's no way this is going to compete with a PlayStation 5 or even an Xbox Series X, maybe not the S. But when you do look at Nintendo's recent past, they are pretty fair when it comes to, comparing their price tags to their shared competition consoles like the PlayStation and the Xbox. So I doubt it's gonna reach that $500 price point if, everything goes well outside of the factors of Nintendo. And moving on. Bear with me in this next segment because it has to do with leaks, and I know that I'm usually more open with talking about leaks than the relationship of two cheaters, but even for this one, this gives me the vibes of like the Xbox 720 PlayStation 4 memes in 2008, because it has to do with people claiming that the PlayStation 6 is somehow leaked already. And I only want to talk about it briefly just for the fuck of it, but there is some sort of merit to it, because people claim over on forum pages that the PlayStation 6 is in design complete and in pre-silicon validation, which is, early development, looking for errors and whatnot. And then AL tape out is scheduled for late this year. AL tape out is, you're asking the wrong somebody. I have no freaking clue. And I mean, we do know that Sony does have a PlayStation 6 down the line, because back in the Microsoft Activision case, when all those leaked documents were coming out onto the internet, Sony, they mentioned the PlayStation 6 and developing for it. So we know that we are getting a PlayStation 6, like the line isn't ending anytime soon. But when that is, it's obviously up in the air. And according to these leaks, you know, the wheels are being set in motion right now, which I do believe is pretty true. Like, I'm sure that somewhere in some, you know, abandoned bunker, maybe at like Area freaking 6 or whatever it's called, 64, what is it? They have the team of talented developers crafting, you know, the inner workings of the PlayStation 6, what that's going to look like. But, you know, it's really crazy because the PlayStation 5 came out in 2020, and 2020 is already 5 years ago. And I mean, part of the reason that, you know, talking about the PlayStation 6 is so surreal, especially to me at least, is because, you know, when the pandemic happened, we lost track of a lot of time. So, you know, when the PlayStation 5 launched, that whole period just didn't even feel real. It felt like a fever dream. Not to mention the lack of decent first-party titles you couldn't play on PlayStation 4, except for maybe Astrobot's Playroom, but, you know, let's not even deep dive into that shit right now. And moving on once again, the box art of any game is not complete without that nice little, you know, rated E for everyone, a rated M for mature rating in the bottom right or bottom left, or if it's some other, you know, region shit that isn't even that. The Entertainment Software Rating Board is one of the most prestigious, you know, things that we have in gaming that allows players to know what age rating, you know, a game is before they even pop it into their system. And when it comes to the video game series of Resident Evil, you don't need an ESRB rating to know that you shouldn't let your freaking 5-year-old play this game. But many Resident Evil fans are rejoicing right now because apparently on their official website that shows the game ratings of every, you know, game that they rate, Resident Evil 6, the 2012 release, has been rated for Xbox Series consoles, and people think that a Resident Evil 6 Xbox release is really imminent. Now, Resident Evil 6 is currently only playable on the last generation of consoles, and the last generation being the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and on the ESRB rating board's website, you would think that the Xbox Series is like talking about all Xboxes, since, you know, Microsoft, they don't give a shit how they name that console anymore, so you would think it might apply to, you know, all the Xboxes, including the Xbox One, all the way to maybe the Series consoles. But apparently, like, I searched different games, Skate 3, they listed specifically for Xbox 360 and Xbox One. So the series is obviously referring to the 2020 release consoles of, you know, the latest generation of Xbox. So that, you know, merits the whole idea that Resident Evil 6 is coming to the latest platforms. Now, while we're only seeing this listed for Xbox Series consoles, is yet to be seen. If there's some sort of exclusivity deal, we don't know that. Maybe they're just still, you know, working on the game, if this is actually, you know, being rated and about to get ported. But it would be nice if this was more than a port and instead a remake, like the Resident Evil 4 remake from a few years ago that was just, it did amazing numbers. It was really fun to watch people play. And since they're going down the line of remaking pretty much every Resident Evil title, when it comes to Resident Evil 5, that had some really mixed reviews, and many people don't even think that that game should be remade. So if Capcom is listening to their, you know, their fan base and whatnot, maybe they're just going to skip Resident Evil 5 and go straight to Resident Evil 6 like we see here. And lastly for today, the original Switch isn't dead just yet, because we still do have a long list of remasters and even new games for the original Switch that are supposed to be coming down the line. But as we speculate on how Nintendo plans to phase this console out, it was recently revealed on the XDC podcast that apparently one of the last or the last big Switch game that's going to come out is supposed to be a beloved and somewhat niche series. And they claim that it's not a remaster, which is interesting because we already do know, or at least we've heard, that 3DS game of Kirby Planet Robobot is supposed to be getting a port to the Switch pretty soon as well this year. But like the graveyard of the countless victims that Nintendo has buried over legal disputes in their whole lifespan, there's also a graveyard of like a bunch of game IPs that they haven't touched in literal years. Like, there's so many from the NES, SNES era that we haven't seen new iterations of, obviously like 3DS with Kirby Planet Robobot. So like the common sentiment I've seen online, I'm leaning more towards towards us seeing maybe a new Kid Icarus game, which we haven't got a new iteration of since 2012 with Kid Icarus Uprising on the 3DS. But you know, there's also other franchises that we haven't seen in a while that people are really excited for, like a new F-Zero game, maybe even Star Fox if they consider that, you know, a little more niche. And you know, obviously one of the last big releases that we do know for sure we're gonna get on the original Switch is Metroid 4, since we got that trailer not that long ago. But there's also gonna be a new direct just for the original Switch, I think in February they said, or March, one of the 2 months. So I'm pretty sure that's when we're going to get our answers on, you know, what these new games are going to be in the last games for the Switch. But all I know is the original Switch still holds a lot of value to me as, you know, a Nintendo fan. So even if I do end up getting the Switch 2 this year, I'm still going to find myself playing my original Switch, you know, for a while until I, you know, put it down until I want to just pick it up and maybe disappoint myself trying to beat the rest of Mario Wonder. I hate those musical note freaking levels. I hate that shit so much. And that's all I got for today, man. If you enjoyed, leave a like on the video, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.